God's put this on my heart. I think He wants a word with His people. Jews, you are in a mess. They worship the altar like it's a chore, because their law, which they have complicated, is becoming unworkable. I can clearly see rebellion in their tribes and homosexual practices. I think the snake has got into your tribe and complicated your mind and caused laws that are completely unnecessary. Especially in New York, Brooklyn. These are the documentaries I'm seeing. God has left the building basically because they're kind of sort of wrapping themselves up in ritual. As I say, and I've seen this bondage exercise they was doing around their arm. A lot of outward practices, which I just see like calorie counting. It's almost as if they get it over and done with, and their duty to God has been done. I think that they're absolutely buried in stuff that's been invented on top of like the basic law that we all understand, even Christians. And he's pointing to Tovia Singer, who talks absolute complication that no one understands. God's law, as I say, they did, some did do what God wanted them to do, to go out to all the nations of the world and spread their gospel, as God keeps calling it. But some of them went unto themselves, and they've obviously become bloated with what they've put onto it. And this chosen people thing, I think God means more or less, it's from ancient times. They've somehow, some people think that exterminating the goyim from other nations is an interpretation of that. They've gone wayward, way off the lines. He says that if even Christians understand this basic law from the First Testament, he keeps saying, the Old Testament, like the Ten Commandments, all those kind of things, and it's been built up on that. More into tradition than anything. They're trying to cock up my words in V2K because they know that this is important. And like God says, I can't see them, see God in their tribe anymore, but because I think they're disheartened. That's probably the reason why God's gone missing, in their core beliefs. As I say, in an earlier video, I was seeing these Brooklyn men, on a balcony, and I thought they look like they've got lust in their eyes. They was all on holiday together. And then God dropped it to me, they're into homosexual practices. They was all arguing about the law of carrying certain things to one room to another, so they're absolutely bound up and miserable. As I say, all the traditions and stuff has got on top of them, and they're in bondage, literally in bondage, like what they put around their arm with that box and all sorts of stuff. And God's saying God doesn't live here anymore. As I say, I believe the snake has whittled into their tribe, and it's about to be outed. As I say, that some worrying sort of people. I can't remember the other guy. Talking about the rabbis talking about dildos and stuff like that. There's something really going on that's terrible. In the Jewish tribes. As I say, Christians will understand, what Tovia Singer was talking about. Somebody who's kind of complicated it so hard. He's so into his own law, which I think is the Talmud, which is a comic as far as God's concerned. It's just yeast too far. It's just invented rubbish on top of rubbish on top of rubbish. I know that it's all mixed up with real tradition and stuff, so I acknowledge that, but God says, we're one in the same, because they won't accept Jesus because he pointed this out, and the Pharisees wouldn't have it, the yeast of the Pharisees, and they're like empty tombs, and like keep getting this esoteric kind of vision of like you know, like I've talked about like these portals, these Catholic churches, you know, like a kind of tombs, you know, like with skulls around the portals, you know, like, so there's some dualistic bad stuff going on in these churches, or have been in the past, esoteric practices which kind of stretch into science and sort of satanic beliefs as well. So still going down that route, but you know, I just keep seeing tombs, you know, empty tombs. It's like the people are like empty tombs. They're wrapped up in ritual rather than actual real connection with God. You know, that should be enough, really. You know, like God doesn't intend for us to sort of do a billion rituals a day. He wants a personal relationship with everyone. And I know that that's a Christian thing, the spirit thing, but you know, even if it was just strictly obeying the Ten Commandments and knowing that, you know, first book, you know, the Torah, you know, the First Testament, the Old Testament, you know, that's enough for God, you know, and whatever to work off, because you're not doing any favours by, you know, like going berserk with 1,000 rituals a day. You just it's demoralising people, and it's unworkable. So I'll just put that